on my first step ever. After completing 125 episodes, here is a collection of special edition that we have got for you to end this year with really big, impactful, unconventional stories of those people who have gone far beyond their first steps but are more than happy to keep working towards the many first steps that have come in their life. So let's just dive deep into this episode today because I have someone who is an amazing woman who has created impact all over the world. And she is a co founder, she is a podcast host, and she is a mentor, strategist, a consultant, and above all, a really, really great human being. So please join me in welcoming Caitlin Judd, all the way from the amazing planet called Earth, because she's a global personality, I would say.
Oh, Ashani, stop. That's too much. I love that you listing all the things. I like to now call it, I heard the term last week. It's a portfolio career. Makes it just lot of titles there, a lot of hats, but all things that I love doing. And yeah, now I can call it a portfolio career. But thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor.
That's amazing, Caitlin, because this is what it actually looks like to own your talent, to own your life, to own yourself. Why would you want to straight jacket yourself in one particular term in a career when you do have multiple talents and you do possess that superpower, actually excel in more than one career? So thank you so much, Caitlin, for starting this amazing episode on such an important and amazing note. I like to give a little bit of a background about Caitlin going forward before we kind of jump into those amazing questions that I have for her. I'm very excited. She is really beaming with energy and she's really passionate. So she loves helping female founders create and grow successful and sustainable businesses. So you are someone who's listening to us today, even people who love to build their business, do hang around. It's going to be a very insightful episode. And she's deeply interested in how companies can create more sustainable business practices with a particular focus on reducing the negative impact on local environments. And this is a very important topic. And as I already said, that she is the co-founder of Lady Brains, a platform dedicated to helping early stage founders and their businesses grow so they can live more fulfilling, meaningful, and sustainable lives. This just doesn't end over here. She's also the co-host of the Lady Brains podcast. Now, hear this very, very carefully. One of the Australia's most top-rated entrepreneurial bodies. She is known for getting the story behind the story and bridging the gap between entrepreneurial listeners and incredible global founders. Now, she does this with her amazing co-founders. So, do check Lady Brains podcast out if you haven't already. But I have a feeling that most of you must have already been tapping them. Your kind of you must have already delved into some of the podcasts if you're in the entrepreneur space. So as we can see, Caitlin is a superwoman. She is exercising all the superpowers. That's when you call yourself someone who can tap into superpowers. But to reach to this stage, there is a journey that a person takes. Now let's trace a step back in Caitlin's journey from the very beginning. And I'd like to ask you this question, Caitlin. What were the surrounding that you grew up in? What were the mindset of the people that you were surrounded up with?
Such a great question, and it's definitely been a journey, a long journey. If I'm truthful, but yeah, look, I look back to when I was younger. We can start, I guess, in those really informative years, those early days of primary school, and I'm really fortunate. I'm really fortunate to have grown up in the family that I did, in the area that I did, the schools that I attended. I don't take that for granted. I know that that's not everyone's experience. And so, I look back on that time and it was such a rich, wonderful time in my life. And, I'm really grateful for all the people that got to play a role in my education and bringing me up, whether it was my parents, my aunties, my teachers, the neighbors. It was such a time, we're looking back like in the 90s. And I feel like, the sense of love thy neighbor, really just like, we were always just hanging out and supporting one another. It was never kind of a question of, whose kid is that? It's like all the kids were hanging out in the street. We all went to school together. We all supported one another. I'd be down the road. Like, honestly, it's so funny. Like, my mum would tell us stories about, she'd kind of come home one day and, there'd be all the kids from the street or the neighborhood would be in our house just playing along. And,
Lovely.
it was that kind of time, it was such a, free, beautiful time where we could all support one another. And, it didn't really matter, whose family you belong to. And I think that was such an important part of my upbringing. It's like, it didn't matter who you were. It didn't matter what your background was, what your life experience, had been. And, again, I'm really fortunate, really grateful for that experience. I grew up with really strong women in my family. Yeah, my mom, my two aunties, my cousins. And, they really taught me and told me that, you can be anything and you can do anything. And again, it's not until you're older and you look back at that message and go, wow, that is such a critical message, especially as a young girl, to hear that. That isn't always our experience. And, of course, I faced other external challenges, and we can go into the challenges later in the conversation. But, to have people that you look up to, such as your family and your teachers, to have them tell me that, you can do anything, you can achieve anything, you can be anything, is really quite an important and special lesson. So, my family, like the women in my family, very vibrant,
Love it.
life of the party, but also, wildly intelligent, very giving. My grandmother, she still plays the piano. She's 93 years old, but she's been a piano
Wow.
teacher her whole life.
God bless her.
God bless her, right? An amazing woman, has an OAM, which is an Order of Australia medal for teaching piano to disadvantaged youth.
Incredible.
And
Congratulations to her.
yeah, so special. And she still plays for the church. She still catches up with her choir buddies. And, again, I grew up looking at these women and, my grandmother and as I said, my mom and my, aunties, and they worked and they pursued their passions and they did it with such vigor and valor and, joy. And I realized, I'm like, oh, you can create a life that suits who you are, the things that you're passionate about, the contribution that you want to make to the world, but you can also do it with a little bit of just, pizzazz and fun and
Yeah.
spunk. And so I learned that early on, and that was such an important lesson. And then, when I went to kind of school, both primary school and high school, I really sought out those teachers that saw me for me. And I was kind of that kid that, interestingly enough, now, you can't get the microphone off me, but that didn't come naturally to me when I was younger. I used to kind of like to sit back and, observe. And I used to like to build more intimate kind of relationships, and didn't really like putting my hand up in the classroom or, having to present. That actually wasn't my thing. But, when you're kind of, I would say, a little shy, you do tend to kind of gravitate towards the teachers and the, your
Yes.
friends that
Yes.
really understand who you are as a person. Yeah, my kind of teacher in year 1 and 2 just, I guess she saw something in me, as she probably saw something in every student. Now I look back, and just gave that level of attention and love and leadership. The way that she led was just so soulful and just so, again, really personable. Like, she really understood what motivated every student of hers. And it was just, I look back and I'm like, God, she was amazing. We used to have rabbits in the room. Like, I'd be able to sit there and do my homework and, pat the rabbit. And also, if I did, she knew your strengths and your weaknesses. And I did, again, you look back and go, oh, that's like, oh, that's how things should work. Oh, that was a first sign, but also encouraged you to push yourself outside your comfort zone. And, I think that's really pretty special and magical, because I can imagine that, 6, 7-year-olds are not the easiest people
Not
to
at
manage.
all.
I have such, admiration for teachers, man. I tell you what. But yeah, again, and also, again, she was mirroring kind of what my family was saying, which is, you can have a bit of fun. We'd just like stick it. There was just glitter and stickers everywhere. I look back at that time, year 1 and year 2, I was so fortunate. It was just colorful. It was vibrant. It was happy. It was it was a special time. And, she again really was a teacher that was like, you can do anything. And, I see something in you. As I said, I'm sure she also saw that in everyone else. So really, really appreciated her approach to life, to leadership, to teaching. And I've taken so much away from that. So yeah, that was, I really was, again, as I said, grew up the mindset of try everything, but do it well. My mum used to say, if you're going to do something, do it well or don't do it. Don't do it at all.
Wow, Caitlin, what an encouraging environment to grow up
Mm,
in, I would say. So I'm very happy that you had that sort of an environment to grow up in.
mm,
And for all of us who are listening to us today or watching us, I don't know if you were able to kind of pinpoint this thing, but I like to kind of emphasize this. Even though you were presented with the opportunities,
mm,
it was definitely you who were observing things very carefully, absorbing things, and making a mental note of how to apply those things.
mm,
So, even though I would say that sometimes we do have good surroundings, we have good opportunities, we have platform, but it really depends on us what we make out of it. And I would say that you, as you reflect back on your journey, and I can see that how observant you were also aware of certain, your own talents back
mm.
then, or what you would like to work towards, and how appreciative were you about other people and kind of to learn from them. So thank you so much, Caitlin, for taking us through that amazing journey of
Mhm.
yours so far, because we are going to follow you more far ahead in your journey
Yeah,
after
we
this.
we only got to year 2, so we got a while to go. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So from here, I would say that I think that from what I hear, you had a solid foundation,
Mm,
building on seeing your women from your own household,
yeah.
pursuing their own talent. And I think that's where maybe the idea of you can be who you want and do your thing
Mm,
sort of maybe a kind of sunk in for you. So from there, I would really like to know, how did you start recognizing your inner voice as you probably reach your uni days or your teenage life? Were you facing any sort of challenges? Because that's a very fragile time. I mean, yeah, things change for you. You invite new people in your life, new perspective in your life. If you've changed the location, how were things back then for you when you were like in your university time?
Yeah. Oh gosh, so much here. I like to say that I peaked in primary school. So like I did really, really well, became like the house captain and won the music
Woo!
awards and just I was just thriving when I was 12 years old. And then, you go to high school and you're all of a sudden you're like this, what is it? The small fish in a big pond kind of thing. And
Uh-huh.
you're kind of like, oh, yeah, like there's a lot of incredibly talented people out there and you step up. It's like you've got to grow up from this safe environment at primary school into high school. But you do, you got to, you've kind of, that's a transition, right? And I guess as I'm speaking, I love the idea that we can think of these moments as transitions, because some people call them challenges, some people call them different things, but they are, when you boil it down, these are all moments of transition. And when you transition
Lovely.
from high school to university, or perhaps your first job, or when you have a child, all of these moments, they do come with their challenges. They're also super exciting, but they are moments of transition, and any moment of transition really requires a lot from you. It does. It requires a lot of courage. You need your support around you. You might have to put yourself in uncomfortable positions or new environments. And I think, just taking that for what it is and stepping into that transition with a little bit of extra grace, and allowing yourself to,
Love
perhaps
that.
fail, perhaps fall. That's okay. Like that is totally normal. I've done it so many times. But it is a moment of transition. And so, going from primary school to high school, I was like, whoa, okay, time to step up. Had the best again, had again a great time. Met some of my closest best friends are from high school, and really, really fortunate. But I definitely wasn't the brightest light or the smartest in the room, which, by the way, I'm very happy not to be. I think it's really important to surround yourself with amazing people. Um, But, you kind of go into that space and yeah, you've quickly got to grow up. And then the next transition obviously is transitioning out of high school into university. And that's kind of when it's like, all right, you're on your own, you get to make your own decisions. Do
Scary.
you want to show up for class or not? Not really today. But you've got to become an adult pretty quickly.
Yep.
And, I didn't really know what I wanted to do when I finished high school, like so many people. I
Hmm.
knew that I had an interest in business. I knew that I had an interest in the arts. I was a creative person. I did a lot of graphic design. And I'm like, how do I kind of combine all of this? How do I do something that, can secure my future, but isn't exactly going to be a straight and narrow line? Like,
Yeah.
what could this be? So, I found myself transitioning or enrolling in a business and an arts degree. So I did the
Interesting.
double. Yeah, I did the double. Well, I thought, it's interesting, but also what is interesting actually about this is that I feel like I'm one of the very few people who uses their degrees. Aside from obviously if you study medicine and those people definitely. But being an arts degree, you're never guaranteed to get your money's worth. But I studied arts and I did media and communications, which I find myself hosting a podcast, and
Very
I'm very
natural.
much in the media space. I studied sociology and kind of went on to study positive psychology, which I can talk about, but then also business, and marketing. And I've had my own business. I obviously have had to apply a lot of those lessons. So I like to say I'm one of the very few people that actually have managed to use their degrees. But, I went into university again, not really knowing what the outcome was going to be. And I wasn't so worried about that at the time because I truly believe that any education is a worthwhile investment. It is, and it doesn't have to be a university degree. It can be anything that you want to learn, a vocation. It can be a trade, anything that lights you up, that feels good, that you think that you could use in the future is a worthwhile pursuit. And so, I was doing my degree and, obviously you get closer to the end, you're like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And then I had this other brilliant idea. I was like, maybe I'll go study overseas. So
Wow.
you got into year 3 and I was like, let's go study in America. And I had been fortunate enough to kind of travel over there with family on a trip. And I fell in love with the country. And I was like, God, this is so different to Australia, but so amazing. And, I kind of started to really like lean in and look up like, what is college life in America? And I was like, yeah, I want to be part of that. I want to go and study in America. So yeah, I managed to, facilitate a study abroad in Miami. And I went and studied over there for 6 months. And
Incredible.
yeah, I ended up kind of moving over there after I graduated, and it was such an informative time of my life. And I guess like, the lesson in that is it doesn't have to be your learning experience can be anything that you want it to be. And there are opportunities that sometimes no one was doing that at the time, interestingly enough. None of my friends had studied overseas. And so it was just something that I was like, oh, here's an opportunity. Not everyone's doing it, but hey, like why wouldn't I? Why wouldn't I go and see the world and continue to, educate? I can study international marketing, I could do all these cool things, and it really opened my eyes. It feels like another lifetime to be honest with you, but what it taught me, studying I guess overseas or studying abroad and also living abroad is just, how different obviously cultures operate, but the opportunities that, you're afforded. Like, wow.
Agree.
I did
100%
some
agree.
crazy things. And also you just don't have that sense of I think you're a little braver when you're
Mm.
overseas. I really do. I think that when you're removed from your environment, you kind of have to be a little bit
Yeah,
more
it's not like
brave.
an option.
Yeah, it's not an option. And you have to work hard to kind of build a network, find opportunities. And that's what I did. I went over there, I went to Miami with this mindset of like, do everything once. And if you like it, then you get to do it again. If you don't, then don't worry about it. And oh
Love
my
that.
God, I tried everything. I literally tried everything. I tried, oh my God, I was acting, I was an extra in some like, in Charlie's Angels. Like
Ooh,
I got to host like a I was interning at a theater, and I got to kind of do a behind the scenes. I got to go on stage and talk to like almost like Cirque du Soleil, but
this
there's
is
an
so
equi
cool.
yeah, like all these really cool things. And I worked in ad sales and marketing. I worked for Art Basel, which is a huge international art fair. Like I just said yes to everything. I was on like a yes journey. And I think everyone should, for a certain period of their life, go on a yes journey.
Absolutely.
It can be 3 months, it can be 6, it can be 12, and it's like, just say yes to literally I mean, obviously within reason, be safe. But say yes to everything. Like life is short, but also you just don't know what love or passion you might uncover, and B, a great connection or just a good bloody story. So like, I can't recommend that enough. Is find a time in your life to have a yes journey and go on it, because I look back and I'm just so grateful for that time. I'm really grateful that I said yes to all of those wild things. But it made me a better person. It's a good story, and I've uncovered some passions throughout that process.
Wow. So I would like to kind of touch upon and unpack a couple of things over here, because from what I hear in your journey, and especially for the people who are listening to us, if you are in your early 20s, or
Mm,
even like you're in a phase where you're transitioning. So this is the first takeaway I like to kind of share, that what Caitlin has just, kind of shared with us, that seeing challenges as transition
mm,
is such a positive word to kind of tell ourselves that it is a new thing that's happening with me. It's actually taking me to a different phase of my life, which wherein I'm a much better person. So thank you so much, Caitlin. I also see that brave inner you over here, which is not afraid to kind of experiment to the extent that you are happy to go and see how your life would be in a different country
mm.
altogether. So for people who are listening to us, if that is not kind of the wild journey that you would like to take, I would highly recommend at least changing the city within your country, because staying on your own, managing your own bills, building your own life, making your own mistakes, it really builds your character. And the other very important thing that Caitlin, you just shared in your journey, was saying yes to a lot of things, and especially how you emphasize on that certain period of your time, because I really understand the value of that.
Mm,
While you're growing up and you are still experimenting with who you are, and if something really you know you are passionate about, something is relevant to you, something that relates to you, and if you get an opportunity in that area, or probably something different as well, saying yes early on is a great thing, because that is the stepping stone of finding yourself sooner. So thank you so much, Caitlin. I think we have gone through this amazing journey of yours, from your childhood to winning such amazing awards in your primary school, to then coming to this transitioning phase, and then just hopping to a new country like America, and
mm.
just being in the Charlie's Angel sounds really amazing to me.
Oh, that was a
Associated.
wild story. It was the ABC remake, and I remember sitting backstage, and I looked down, and there's Rachel Taylor. She's an Aussie. She was in it, and Minka Kelly, and they were just like having a little rest backstage, and I was like, oh my god, you two are so beautiful, and like I'm like, there's little me like ready to be an extra, but I've got the clip. It's fun. I mean, again. When else can you do those things? But really, also a good point of Shani. It's like you don't have to remove yourself entirely from your, wherever you live. You don't have to be that drastic and go and move overseas. There are little things that you can do in your environment, and whether that is joining a new club. And we'll talk about, some suggestions, that I can kind of make later to help with those moments of transition. But it's just, whether it's following that yes journey, or, integrating something new into your environment, and pushing yourself. I think that's really important, and that will help you grow, and just going out and really seeking those opportunities.
Sounds incredible, and that's exactly where we're going to segue now, because I think let's talk about what's happening now with your amazing portfolio career that we touched upon very early on, about the Lady Brains, being the co-founder of Lady Brains, being the co-host of Lady Brains podcast, and also being a
Mm.
brand coaching and strategist. So please talk us through this professional journey of yours. How was the transition period for you over here?
Oh, it's kind of a big, well, look, what ended up happening is I came back, my Miami gig, my sojourn over there, and I graduated. And then it's funny, I kind of feel like I went backwards a little. And if I'm going to be honest with you, I think there was a little bit of external pressure, which is totally normal to be like, you
Absolutely.
need to get a real job, a well-paid job, and just like sort your life. You can't just gallivant around the world forever. And I was like, I like this plan. Like, this is working out fine for me. But, my parents probably had different ideas. But look, totally normal. And I think I came back and I took a full time job in marketing, but in an industry that perhaps wasn't so aligned with who I was as a person. And I was there for about 2.5 years. And, I kind of hit a ceiling. There wasn't really anywhere for me to grow in this company. And I just remember thinking, like, is this it? Like, what am I going to do next? Who am I going to turn to? And there wasn't really anyone in the organization that probably I could like identify with that looked like me, that kind of perhaps had a career trajectory that I wanted. So it was really difficult to find those
Yeah.
people, those to seek out and talk to and go, hey, like, do you have some advice? So what I started doing was researching and learning, and going back to my kind of I've got a really strong sense of curiosity and love of learning. And so I was reading books, I was watching webinars. I don't think I was listening to podcasts because they weren't quite around just yet. But I remember just sitting down and watching webinars like on everything, on like, well, what happened to kind of pique my interest was well-being, and female leadership and positive psychology, which looks at how humans flourish and thrive. And so I started kind of just, like doing a lot of this self-inquiry, asking the big questions of myself. I was like, all right, I've been here now for a couple of years. I've done some cool shit, but I don't really know where I'm going next. That's okay. But yeah, I'm going to have to figure this out pretty
Mm.
quickly. So I, at the time, called someone that I had seen on the webinar, that was really prolific in the female leadership, well-being, positive psychology space. I ended up calling her and saying, hey, like, I need a lifeline. Like, I don't, can you coach me? Can you mentor me? Can you tell me what the hell I should do? And God bless her, she was like, look, you can't afford me. But she was like a high-end exec coach. I was like, yeah, fair. She's like, but I'm running this program. It's a female leadership program. I suggest that you come along. You'll get a lot of value out of it because you'll get me for 12 weeks of the program or whatever it was, rather than one session.
Awesome.
And I was like, cool. And I was the youngest person in the room, which was a little bit daunting. But
Mm.
again, and I'll kind of touch back on this, but I put myself in an environment that I was like, okay, got to level up again. Got to grow. And also, these women might one day be people that I need to know. And so I went there, and the whole premise was to kind of set the next goal. What was my goal? What did I want to achieve? And really, it was about creating the next, funnily enough, transition from my current role into what I was doing next. Now, lo and behold, I thought that would look like going into another job, like another organization, and continuing down the path of, I don't know, marketing manager, brand manager, whatever it was, following more of a traditional pathway. But what ended up happening was the woman that I reached out to and who invited me along to the program, she ended up hiring me. Her and her business partner ended up hiring me. And so they kind of went from mentors to what I would call a sponsor. And again, I could talk about that later. But they saw something in me, and I was really curious and hungry to learn. And they came up with the idea of maybe you should work for yourself. Now, at 25 years old, it's not really something that I don't know. Back then, I wasn't thinking, yeah, cool, I know everything and I'm ready to go out on my own.
Yep.
I mean, I still don't feel like I'm ready. I've been working for myself for 10 years. Oh God, that gives away my age, but 10 years. And, I just like, it's a funny thing to have someone go, hey, what, well, do you want to do some work? And I kind of started doing it on the side, a little bit of kind of consulting work on the side while I started my job, transitioned out from there, started working for these women, started working for more people in the same industry, which was that well-being space. And and started a consultancy. And I was like, holy shit, like I've got my own business here. And it kind of just happened. And so while it wasn't intentional, obviously you start doing something like that and you do niche down, it was very niche. It was marketing and branding support, especially like building global virtual online businesses for the leaders
That's huge.
in this space, in positive psychology, well-being, and leadership space. And so I was then intentionally building a business around that, and that went on for a couple of years, and I loved it. I learned a lot. There's nothing like learning how to build a business when you're kind of learning and doing at the same time. It was like learning on the fly. And what was also awesome was these women that hired me, and I know I was also in the end, I mean, I was working for a couple of guys as well. They would often pay for me to learn. So they would pay for coaches, in, I don't know, Facebook advertising or writing emails or, whatever it kind of was. They saw it as the quickest way for me to upskill and they would invest in me. And so I was learning and working at the same time. And it was a really, really cool opportunity to be able to, as I said, yeah, build a business, learn at the same time, and build my own, build others. And so I did
No,
that.
this
It
is
was
so cool.
it was intense. And then that kind of led to Lady Brains, which it doesn't, I mean, in a way, it doesn't really lend itself into Lady Brains, but what was happening on the side is interesting because I was obviously working for myself, but I started to feel really lonely. And while I had teams, virtual teams, my clients' virtual teams, and I was very much part of them. And that was great, but I'm a real physical person. I really need to be surrounded. I draw energy from people. Don't get me wrong. And in my downtime, like, I think I'm a bit of a, ambivert intro outro, but I definitely needed to surround myself with people. And so I
Can
guess,
totally relate with this.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And so one day I realized, oh, I'm not really, here's the tough thing. I'm not in an organization or a company. So I'm not really getting invited to industry events, networking opportunities. I don't really like any of the ones that are out there at the moment. Like there were a few. I was going to some conferences. They were cool, but also big and quite overwhelming and very hard to connect on an intimate level. And so, yeah, I decided that why not create my own kind of networking opportunity? And myself
Hmm.
and my two co-founders at the time decided that we would start running supper clubs. And, these supper clubs were, yeah,
Interesting.
really small, intimate dinners for women in business or women that had an idea or women that wanted to start something. And yeah, so we started running these really intimate supper clubs at restaurants in Melbourne. They started selling out. And it was a way for me to stay connected to women that were working in an organization, but also women that were really entrepreneurial and wanted to start something. So that was the whole premise around starting Lady Brains. And it really was, the idea was to just be able to bring women together that, wanted to connect over business and have really interesting conversation and also not feel like any
Left
question
out.
was just, yeah, left out or any question was a stupid question. And we were like, check the ego at the door, come in, share your story. And it was a safe space, and I think we created a really fun, safe environment, which is now kind of like, I'm really big on following that through with any event that I do. It's like, it's got to be safe and it's got to be fun. Like, and that's not easy, but it's a good recipe. But yeah, that's how Lady Brain started. And again, that was more born out of a need. So I guess, starting my consultancy was someone else's idea, but there was a need there, and I managed to fill that. But then, starting Lady Brains was definitely a personal need. I think, like any really good business, it often starts that way. So, yeah.
It gives me a great, like immense joy, Caitlin, right now that you are able to take us through the logical steps in your journey towards creating, Lady Brain, and what happened along the way. Because now everyone can see and hear that it is not an overnight wonder, that people really kind of talk about in the books or in the
Mm.
media. It builds, and it really takes you to make that effort. And as Caitlin just mentioned, it took over 10 years to
Mm.
get to that point. And in those 10 years she was doing much more than that was required of her, because she really liked to do that, and like she took on every opportunity. So thank you so much, Caitlin. I mean, I loved how you went into the depth of it. You've been so candid and honest about the each step, where you reached out for the help when it was
Mm.
necessary. You did listen to an opportunity that came your way, that someone, kind of shared with you, why don't you probably do this? You are quite well equipped for it. You did go ahead and try that out, and things started coming out of the opportunities. I did read somewhere, the reward for doing something good is actually getting more opportunities. And this is
Yeah.
something that I can definitely see in your journey. So firstly, I like to say thank you so much, Caitlin, for being on my first step ever. There definitely is one more question I like to kind of ask you,
Good.
but before wrapping up, but I like to kind of say this has been an incredible episode, where I would say that this really justifies that why my first
Mm.
step ever is over here, to kind of take
Mm.
our listeners through the real deal of someone's success.
Mm.
So let's just kind of wrap this episode with this really interesting question that I would like to ask about lady brains itself. If you
Mm.
can tell us that in probably like top three things that you feel, apart from that environment of training, it's safe and fun, that
Mm.
how lady brains empowers women around the globe, and which could also be like a takeaway for the youth, for us in today's time.
Cool. That's a big question. So how do we inspire? Yeah, look, I think, the premise of, as I said, Lady Brains was to create an environment that felt safe and that allowed women to connect over business. As I said, often conversations can get derailed by other things that are going on in the world, which is completely normal and understandable. But, we wanted to prioritize our own education, and further our learning, and that was why we started it. And from the supper club, obviously lent itself into the podcast, and that our podcast, we've had over, I don't know, 110 guests, 120, I've lost count. But
Wow.
we've had a lot of really, yeah, incredible female founders on that show. And, obviously, it is to highlight those women, and the incredible contribution that they've made to their industry, I think to the Australian startup ecosystem. But also, for the listener, it's an opportunity for them to be inspired, and to learn. And every time we sit down and we interview a founder, the whole idea is that we can inspire just one person, and we can and then they can take something away from it and apply it to their business. And that's what we always say to our guests. It's like, give us the story, but also kind of break it down, and whether you need to re-engineer it or just think about what are the steps. Again, your podcast, I mean, I love that, the practicality of it, like what were the steps, and how did you apply it. And so that podcast, I think is some incredible work that we've done in being able to, yeah, spread those stories even further and get them into the ears of women that perhaps are starting or scaling a business. And then from there, we've run mentor programs, and we've got an online program, and we've run events, and we've invested, in a female founded company. And the
Yes,
whole
of course.
idea was to continue to give back and fuel this ecosystem and be able to hopefully one day, see the same amount of female founders in the Australian ecosystem as men, but also recognize and understand the challenges that they face. And especially when it comes to raising capital, we really need to kind of close. There's no excuse for it. There's absolutely no excuse for it. And it's really difficult to reconcile what the statistics show. It's ridiculous. It's, 3% of venture capital goes to female founded companies, right? It's a very,
Hmm.
very, very small amount. And it's hard to look at that and stay positive. However, and this is why I think it's so important to keep having these conversations and to keep, profiling female founders. And to be honest, any founder that is a minority founder or isn't given the same equal kind of opportunities to share, what they're doing and to gain funding. It's really important to keep kind of pushing this and talking about it and to, giving women and giving minority founders an opportunity to do exactly that, to be able to profile and platform them. So whether it's an event, whether it's a podcast, whatever opportunity it is, just calling out people's biases, it's the little things that will add up. I think it's really important, again, to have these conversations with people. And that's why I'm so grateful to be on this podcast, is like, if someone just hears something and they recognize or they realize that they can go on to do something that perhaps they hadn't considered, that's amazing. And that is going to get us closer to closing the, entrepreneurial gender gap. And that gives me a lot of hope. So, yeah, I God, I don't know what else to say on top of that, but yeah, definitely go, read, listen, learn, find your mentors, find your good people, find the people that are going to advocate for you, and put yourself in the right place. I really do think that, opportunities come from people. We used to say that a lot, on the podcast. And go and network, go and put yourself out there. It doesn't matter if you're green and new and have no idea. No one knows what they're doing, let's be honest. So go and put yourself in those positions and find the good people. And yeah, you'll be fine. You'll be absolutely fine.
Ooh, Caitlin, you're doing an amazing service to people around the globe, I would say. And that is such a great understanding for us to kind of take us through what Lady Brain really does. And it was really appalling to hear the percentage of the female founders who actually get their investments done. So I think you forefront of it, kind of trying to bridge that gender gap. So thank you so much for being on my first step ever. There's one thing that if
Oh,
I have learned from this entire journey of yours is that when you did not find something that you were really looking out for, you paved your own way to look out or create that for you.
mm,
So, listeners, my friends who's watching us, if you are in the same boat, if you do not really understand what is for you, it's probably because you are the person who might have to create it, or probably kind of keep experimenting and you might find it. So, thank you so much, Caitlin, for being on my first step ever. It is an honor. And as I always request my guest speakers to leave our listeners with a quote or a saying that they really resonate with.
oh, thank you, Ashani, so much for having me. It's such an honor. I've had this quote on my wall for years. I'll show you. It's literally on a piece of paper. Like, it's so crumpled. And it's come with me from, new house to new house, wherever I'm living. I apologize because I don't know who it's by. I probably should look that up, but I just love it. And I'll read it out. To be humble, curious, and new in our approach, but still honor our intelligence, will produce the highest form of living. This is the approach that enables us to manifest that which we truly desire.
And here's an impact creator sitting right across to me on my virtual studios today. I really want to thank Caitlin Judd for being on my first step ever. You have really lit up our day today with the knowledge, the insight, and the experience that you have got, and you're doing an amazing work. More power to you. So, thank you so much for being on my first step ever. And to everyone who's listening to us out here today, if you're interested to follow Caitlin's journey or kind of know a bit more about what she does, I'm going to leave a bit more information and links in the show notes. So, do check that out. And to all my listeners, we will see you in the next episode with more such unconventional and power packed stories. But until then, as I always say, start believing in yourself and keep believing in yourself.